Saban. Well, let's go back in time and let's take a look at the history of Saban Entertainment. When it comes to Saban, you think of some of their famous franchises, such as Power Rangers and Digimon, but also they brought some of your childhood television shows to life, and they worked on other projects outside of Power Rangers. Like, for example, they worked with Marvel to bring their animated shows to life, such as X-Men the Animated Series and Spider-Man the Animated Series, and they also worked on teenage drama show such as Sweet Valley High, and also worked on an American adaptation for Kamen Rider known as Masked Rider. But how did the studio start? From its success as a music studio, well, less success, but becoming a movie and TV company, and then later going downhill after being filed under bankruptcy after Hasbro bought Power Rangers. Well, let's find out the rise and downfall of Saban Entertainment. Back in the 80s, the studio started off as a music company, and the studio was founded by Haim Saban. But then they would later go on to do some dubbing for anime and to produce some films. Like how they made an R-rated film with Judd Nelson. God, I don't even know what it's called. But Judd Nelson was in the movie, so yeah. And like I mentioned before, they would help Marvel to produce some of their animated shows back in the 90s, such as X-Men the Animated Series, and Spider-Man the Animated Series, and so much more. And they would find that there for the most parts of their really good stuff that they have made, and most of the stuff that they have made were made for Disney. And they would even go on to produce shows like Sweet Valley High, which Sweet Valley High was basically Saban's version of Saban's teenage dramedy for girls back in the 90s. And even one of the stars of Power Rangers, Jason David Frank, who played Tommy in the series, gets to play a small but yet an important role for one of the girls' first boyfriends. And the show overall was just pretty there, I guess. Like, it was really good. I mean, they did a really great job on some of the drama stuff. And then later afterwards, the show ended up getting canceled after only running for 4 seasons. And if you're trying to look for more of the seasons of this show, season 1 is only available on DVD, but they ran out of print. Some of them are leaked online, but I don't think you can find those in good quality online. Also, Catherine Sutherland, aka Kat Hillard, the Pink Ranger, gets to appear in the show as one of the rival cheerleaders. But in 1993, before Sweet Valley High would be released, Saban would change forever. So somewhere around then, Haim Saban would be on a business trip, and in a hotel, he would watch some random TV shows until when he ran into one of the awesome Japanese action series ever made, known as Super Sentai. He would bring the series to life in America to become known as the Power Rangers. And Power Rangers would be the success to Saban. Power Rangers was a huge hit everywhere throughout the 90s. Kids were going crazy to buy all the toys and to buy all the merch. The success for Power Rangers on TV would be really awesome. And this would be Saban's moneymaker, Saban's successful franchise. They would even reuse Sentai footage from the show. And throughout the 90s, Power Rangers had changed Saban for the better. Saban would even produce an anime series known as Technoman. Pretty awesome anime. But still, some projects that Saban have ever made would not be successful as much as Power Rangers. I mean, they would even adapt more of the Sentai series into more of the Power Rangers, like Zeo, Turbo, and Space, and so much more. Power Rangers would obviously come to the big screen with Mighty Morphin Power Rangers the movie that Saban teamed up with 20th Century Fox to make the movie, and even said that they weren't going to reuse any Sentai footage from Super Sentai. Now, this movie had some issues with its success of the first 2 seasons, like for example with the original cast members such as Austin St. John, Third Trang, and Walter Jones, that they were originally going to be in the movie, but because of payment issues that have been going around between them and Saban and the Fox Network executive, they left the series and were replaced by Steve Cardenas, Karen Ashley, and Johnny Youngbosch. The movie also had a bit of delays and with some problems with its visuals. And when it was released in theaters in 1995, it was blah. The movie did not do very well with fans and critics. And not only that, needless to say, it didn't really make as much money as Saban expected would. Especially when they made a movie pilot for Power Rangers Turbo known as Turbo, a Power Rangers movie, which much like the original Mighty Morphin Power Rangers movie, did not do very well. Saban would even get their hands on even more Japanese action series to be adapted to American television, such as VR Troopers, Masked Rider, Beetleborgs, and so much more. They would even produce a live-action Ninja Turtles series called Ninja Turtles: The Next Mutation, in which it did not do very well with audiences, and the show later got canceled after only running for 13 episodes. Although with Turbo, Power Rangers would be struggling a little bit with ratings, and there were even some things that, some plot holes that were never answered, such as this girl in the white robes. God, I don't even remember her name. About Divatox being her sister and so on and so forth, and yeah. And it left on a very massive cliffhanger. Until one day, the savior of the franchise, Power Rangers in Space, was the show that brought the franchise back to its knees. And takes more a bit on a serious and yet darker tone. And is by far one of the most fan-favorite seasons and everyone's favorite season/series of Power Rangers of all time. In a way, this was basically kind of like Power Rangers' own version of The Empire Strikes Back, even taking a lot of inspirations from Star Wars and Star Trek. Even with the series finale known as Final Countdown, would be more like Return of the Jedi, and so on and so forth. And yeah, it was way more popular than how Turbo was, and it did a really amazing job with more awesome storytelling and bringing more stories to the table, even including with other characters such as the Psycho Rangers and so much more. And it was also a great conclusion to the Zordon era of Power Rangers. What started off with Mighty Morphin ends with In Space. But then, in 2001, it was announced that Disney would rebrand Fox Kids into Jetix, and would even buy Power Rangers along with it as well, which means that Disney would own the rights to Power Rangers, or being the distributors for the series. Disney rebranded Fox Kids into Jetix, and Power Rangers would be aired both on Jetix and on Toon Disney. Thus marks the beginning of the Disney era of Power Rangers, although Disney was not really fond of the series and concerned about how the series was too expensive to make, and was even about to cancel the show. But some of the employees behind Saban were, I guess, let go, and and later the filming set locations were moved to New Zealand for Power Rangers. But there were some moments with Power Rangers about how Disney was almost about to pull the plug with Power Rangers RPM, meaning that RPM would be the last season and Disney would later put the series into an end. But then, it was announced that Saban fully bought the rights back to Power Rangers, and later the shows would be distributed by Nickelodeon. Meanwhile, with Saban in their movie division, like how they were making We Summon the Darkness and even Gun's AKIMBO, they were doing very well with some of those. Some of them even got great reviews. Meanwhile, with the Neo Saban era of Power Rangers, they even wanted to make another reboot for Power Rangers, and they have made a reboot for Power Rangers, such as Power Rangers 2017. But needless to say, it did good, very well with audiences, but it did not do very well at the box office. The Neo Saban era for Power Rangers was not doing very well for the future of Power Rangers whenever it comes to the fan base. Even after a 2-year hiatus for Power Rangers, with the argument between Saban and Disney, Power Rangers was not doing very well with some of its production problems. Often trying to reuse Sentai footage, while that's not a problem, but what it is that they don't look a little crispier. And even some behind the scenes drama that has been going on around and around. There were a lot of high expectations for the Neo Saban era, but how they portrayed the show and the series together is executed very poorly, and it's just the same tiring stories that we have seen over and over again. And I understand that this was a kids show, but still, it's more than just a kids show. It's a show that is also made for adults as well. Plus, when seasons like Megaforce was announced back in, I don't know, somewhere around PR Con, some of the conventions, it felt a little rushed than expected. And I guess, granted, while Saban doesn't really have that much money to produce that much of the other footages that they could have filmed that. Granted, while Saban is nowhere near as popular as any other studio in the world, such as Disney, Warner Brothers, 20th Century Fox, Paramount, Universal Studios, Sony, Lucasfilm, Marvel Studios, Wizard World, Ghost Corps, and so much more, including New Line Cinema as well. Saban still doesn't really have that much money in their pockets, despite their success with Power Rangers. And then in 2018, it was announced that Hasbro bought Power Rangers, and that leads to Saban brands being shut down. And Saban was later shut down, and that was the end of it. While Saban had their success in Power Rangers, they were also known for some directed-TV films like with the Addams Family and etc. So what do I think of Saban as a whole of a studio? Well, they do have some really great ideas on the table, especially when it comes for Power Rangers and other things outside of Power Rangers. They managed to have some of their success outside of Power Rangers, despite that they weren't as much as huge as Power Rangers. But there were even some problems with Power Rangers, specifically about how they don't really do that much of telling really great stories when it comes to Power Rangers, like how they did with the Neo Saban era. Even how that there were creative issues with some of the producers from the show. And I thought that Lucasfilm had problems with their issues with Star Wars. And yes, I'm looking at you, Kathleen Kennedy. I feel like that with Saban, I feel like that they could have done so much better. They could have improved more. But I guess because of how some budget issues have been tight and so much other stuff that's been going on, and other things with some drama, like with revealing about what happened to the Neo Saban era, there was a video of a YouTuber talking about a recent interview with Simon Bennett back from 2021, last year, about what happened to the Neo Saban era and how he did not like Saban's new direction for Power Rangers and how it was just random serialized episodes. There was not that much character development other than just learning lessons, but it's just the same thing that we have saw over and over again. Needless to say, Simon Bennett did not really enjoy how Saban was taking this type of new direction for Power Rangers, just trying to add slapsticking, disgusting humor and some other really serialized bad storytelling and so much more. A very problem that is very similar to Lucasfilm, how people like Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau did not like Kathleen Kennedy's take on these. How Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau did not like Kathleen Kennedy's new direction for Star Wars. Even George Lucas himself, after the drama with the controversy of the sequel trilogy, even with Power Rangers just being more like Mighty Morphin than being their own selves, which was pretty much of a poor taste for Saban's new direction for Power Rangers. And even after Hasbro bought Power Rangers and Saban went under bankruptcy as Saban was shut down, Simon Bennett is now taking over the franchise. And it's pretty awesome to see. And he's not afraid to call out Saban for their wrongdoings for the Neo Saban era. I feel like that Saban could have done a little bit more from their success of Power Rangers. But then again, they're not as much as a big studio company as Disney, Warner Brothers, and so much other studio companies out there that I mentioned before. While yes, I understand to just have fun with the budget that you have, still, you could have done a little bit much more with some of the story. And yeah, well, it's pretty sad that Saban Brands was shut down, and Saban as a whole, and most of the employees of Saban were moved their jobs from Saban to Hasbro to keep continuing to work on Power Rangers. Well, yeah, it's pretty sad, and I guess it'll never be that much of the same ever again. But with Power Rangers, Beast Morphers, and Dino Fury, they have improved overall. They've improved from the Neo Saban era with a budget that was so big, kind of like the Mandalorian, but a little bit, but not as big as the Mandalorian, but way cooler than the Neo Saban era. Meanwhile, that the Mandalorian had a much more bigger budget than Beast Morphers or Dino Fury. Yeah, but I wish that maybe that with the new seasons of Power Rangers, I hope that they will improve more with their budget. And yeah, and it seems like that Hasbro is taking a really great continuation so far on the franchise, giving it a bigger budget, more than the other previous seasons. And yeah, so that's basically the end of my history of Saban video. And I know it's a little bit short because I am a little bit busy right now with other things that are going around in my personal life outside of YouTube, like with filmmaking, cosplaying, and school, homework, and so much more. I've been doing very well recently, and I'm just trying to get back on my feet for filmmaking and trying to work on a Star Wars fan film that I will try to announce it hopefully sometime later next month. But anyway, yeah, that's all for today's video. I hope you guys enjoy it. I will try to leave some sources in the description down below. And yeah, subscribe to my YouTube channel, like, share, and comment, and I will see you on the next video. Peace out.